My name is John Lane. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Centerline. We're a digital marketing agency in Raleigh, North Carolina, if you don't know. And what we're doing today is we're kicking off something called the 48-Hour Marketing Challenge. And we're doing it under the guise of something called Lab517. 517 is one of our building addresses here in Raleigh. And we're working with a company in this particular thing called ShelterBox. And ShelterBox is an organization who delivers these amazing emergency supplies for shelter, for clothing, for food to places where there's been disasters. And one of the reasons for 48 hours is because pretty much a disaster anywhere in the world, they will have boxes ready to deploy, to house, to provide shelter and different things for people within 48 hours, no matter where that disaster strikes in the globe. So you can imagine if there's a tsunami in Asia, if there is ridiculous amounts of a natural disaster in Africa, if there's something in America, all these different things, they can deliver tents, food, clothing in these amazing boxes that you'll see in a minute. So the 48-hour challenge is all about us working with ShelterBox to come up with solutions to 5 marketing challenges that they have. And in just a minute, I'm going to grab the camera here. We're going to take a little walk downstairs to our bar area where we're going to be kicking off the project. We're going to get to hear from some of the ShelterBox execs talking about exactly what it is they do as a mission and why this is so important. We're going to get to hear from some of the Centerline folks getting started with the creative endeavor that we're trying to take on to help them solve these challenges. And it's going to be interesting. It's going to be really good marketing for a really good cause, but it's also going to allow us to practice quite a bit of what we consider the future of marketing, which is agile marketing based on cause, making sure that we've got a lot of context around the types of communications that we're putting out there in the world. I'm going to try to keep up on my other phone here in terms of being able to answer questions from people who have questions as we go along through the day. I'm going to be broadcasting now. I'm going to be broadcasting later today, a few different times tomorrow and Friday. And Friday is when we come up with the answers to all these challenges and present them. You can always follow along on Twitter. We're at Centerline. You can hashtag it, hashtag Lab517. You can follow me at John V. Lane, and we will keep you all up to date on everything that's going on. So stick with me. I'm going to grab the camera. You'll see me disappear, and we're going to walk downstairs and get this thing going.
Also someone who we've been working with. He's the communications manager at ShelterBox. He's actually celebrating his year anniversary at ShelterBox today. And before Chris joined as a communications manager, he was actually an ambassador of ShelterBox. So he was actually working as a volunteer in the area and just became very, very passionate about the cause and then joined the team. So we're very excited to have both of them here. We're going to give a little bit of history for some of you that don't know the relationship between ShelterBox and Centerline. It's been about three and a half years in the making. Actually, our client IBM was working with ShelterBox and brought them to us for an initiative that we were working on for a holiday promotion. And we did some great creative. We really enjoyed hearing about the cause, what they were doing around the world. And again, we had a lot of people get passionate here for working on this work. So again, we're very excited. Some of you have seen these videos before, but this has been a probably three-year partnership in the making. Then in 2013, ShelterBox was so kind, they actually gave us an award, a partnership award, for all of the video work that we have been doing. So we actually flew some members. Nathan, where are you? Nathan? Okay. Well, Nathan flew to San Francisco and actually accepted this award on behalf of Centerline. Okay. Thanks, Nathan. Thank you for going to San Francisco for us. I'm sure that was a hardship. So this is when we accepted this award back in February 23rd in 2013. So again, it's just been very rewarding to work with all of them. We got to meet a lot of the board members, a lot of the team, and hear a lot of the stories that again just contributed to us growing a passion for working with the organization. And I think I mentioned this yesterday at the quarterly meeting, but ShelterBox is actually celebrating its 16 years as an organization today. So happy Sweet 16 to ShelterBox. Just kind of very fitting that we're going to kick off Lab517 today as well. Before we get started, I do want to have Aaron come up here one more time to just explain from a marketing perspective what we're going to be doing over these next few days, obviously, as this challenge works, just how we're capturing it, how we're going to be motivating people, how you all can contribute, whether you're volunteering or not, just if you're around the building, the things that you can be taking photos of, contributing on social media, what you can be hashtagging. So I'll kind of let Aaron take it from there. I feel like Kristen already told you everything. No, you did a great job, and I don't think Jennifer is going to move the slides because I don't really have a slide. So it's hashtag Lab517. We're at Centerline on Instagram and on Twitter. John Lane will be periscoping 3 times a day. It'll be like a news broadcast. He's actually doing it right now. It's like so freaking meta, guys. But it's going to be like a news tune-in. That'll be on Periscope. We're going to be using Snapchat as our primary behind the scenes. So we're at Centerliners. We have our own super badass geo filter that Courtney designed, so when you're scrolling through, you'll be able to see it. It says Lab517. It's super badass. And then anybody else that wants to be involved, so please use your own social channels. We'll be handling all the stuff from the Centerline social account, but use your own Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, whatever it is that you feel comfortable with to share all the stuff that we're doing. And if you have any questions, you can always come ask me or any member of the marketing team. Thanks. And before we hand it off to ShelterBox to kind of they're going to walk through their mission, their cause, and get much more ingrained in what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And then, of course, we're going to be actually exploring the marketing challenges and things we're going to be conquering over the next 48 hours. But do want to just nod to that this is called Lab517, featuring ShelterBox. This is our very first of this effort. Hopefully, we're going to be doing much more of this in the future. Obviously, Centerline is becoming this lab of experimentation, and we're trying to explore. Centerline's trying to do a lot of, show our agility and be a creative powerhouse, and really just showcase how we work with our clients. So again, this is going to be the first of many, hopefully, but I cannot think of a better cause to do our first Lab517 with than someone like ShelterBox. So over the next 48 hours, we're going to have a lot of lessons learned, bumps and bruises, but hopefully we're going to come out with some remarkable material, marketing efforts that are going to support and further ShelterBox's cause. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started.
Imagine a situation where you've lost everything, whether through earthquake or flood, tsunami or cyclone, volcano or conflict. What would you and your family need to survive? Imagine a situation where you've lost everything. Then a green box arrives, a shelter box.
It started out as a very simple concept. What can you do for your family if you lost everything in a disaster? Be strong, tried and tested tent for shelter. Some thermal blankets, ground sheets, hats and gloves for warmth. Mosquito nets and a water filter to protect your family from disease. Pots and pans to cook with, a toolkit to repair your home to earn your living. Basically life-saving, life-changing, very essential equipment.
When a devastating earthquake hit Haiti in January 2010, ShelterBox mobilized and was sending boxes within hours.
It really is unimaginable at this point, the totality of destruction throughout the city. Every open area is filled with people sleeping in the streets. Everyone's functioning without electricity, without water, makeshift shelters everywhere. It's unimaginable. Just the loss of life alone is massive. The coordination effort here is huge. It's not just we have shelter, it's where can we put that? Do we have enough for that entire camp? Can we security? Can others provide food, water, sanitation for those areas? So it's just a massive coordination effort, the number of different agencies that are here on the ground.
Told these people how to put up tents and how they're putting up a tent one after another. Behind us, you can see the tents they used to live in. So this is an example of people working with us and camp building up.
ShelterBox sent nearly 30,000 boxes in total, helping almost 1/3 of 1,000,000 people.
There will always be families in need. Fortunately, there will also be those who want to help. Whatever your contribution, you can make a difference to families no homes from disaster.
ShelterBox relies on volunteers and donations to make its work possible. Your gift of time or money can help save lives and give new hope to families who have lost everything. Bringing shelter, warmth and dignity in the shape of a green box.
Hello, I'm Carrie Murray from ShelterBox, and I just want to start by saying a huge, huge thank you to all of you for your time and your passion, your creativity that you've demonstrated to the organization already, and for the extraordinary work that I know is going to happen over the next 2.5 days. I started in disaster relief back in late 2009. In December 2009, I was actually working in marketing for a pharmaceutical company based in Philadelphia, but I used to come down here quite a bit in RTP to GlaxoSmithKline. And the CEO of that organization sent me out to work with a disaster relief organization. And at the time he had said, Carrie, you know that good marketing rewards good marketing, but not good work. And that there are many, many humanitarian aid organizations that do extraordinary and life-saving work every single day, but you never hear about that because they don't have the money and the marketing know-how and the talent to really bring the organization to life and raise awareness. ShelterBox is definitely one of those organizations that's doing life-saving work. I joined a disaster relief organization in December of 2009, and in January, the earthquake that you saw that hit Haiti and really devastated Port-au-Prince hit, and I spent much of the next 6 months working in Haiti and really trying to take some of the marketing know-how I had from my pharma days and trying to help raise some awareness of that organization. That was the first time I came across ShelterBox. And so ShelterBox provided about 1/3 of all tented shelter in Haiti. Really an area where people had nothing, lost everything, and often you go into tent camps where there are 30,000 people living, and that one tent that you saw that was just kind of flailing, it was just some sheets. That was very common, what you'd see in the initial days after the earthquake hit. So being able to go there and provide just basic supplies, and it's really basic stuff that you need in the aftermath of a disaster. It's food, it's water, it's shelter, it's access to medical care. And there's this organization, ShelterBox, that I saw doing extraordinary work. And Kristen mentioned I joined ShelterBox in November of 2015. During my time working in disaster relief, I kept coming across ShelterBox. I saw them again, literally on an island in the middle of nowhere in the Philippines after Typhoon Haiyan hit. And just really people starting to rebuild their lives with the help of this organization. So it's thrilling for me to come and to join and to help really raise some awareness and ultimately support for this organization that helps tens of thousands of families every year who have lost everything in disaster situations and also crisis situations like the Syrian refugee crisis. We're going to talk a little bit, Chris and I, about the work that we do. I think it's, without a doubt, this organization is usually first to arrive on the ground, and it's because it's a model of preparedness, and there's a sign that preparing for the worst day ever. Well, we're preparing every single day for the worst day ever. so that we can ultimately save lives and really have an impact when crisis hits. So I want to take the opportunity to introduce my partner in crime, Chris Alexander, and have him say a few things about himself. And he's just, he works on the communication side for the organization. He's pretty much a one-man band, and so I know that he's thrilled to be able to have the opportunity to tap into the creative know-how that all of you have. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
Thank you, Carrie. What's up, Centerline? Finally, people that want to talk about typography and HTML. I don't get to talk about that stuff at work. My name is Chris Alexander, and I am the comms manager for ShelterBox. I'm a lucky guy. I get to do ShelterBox stuff every day. I started as a volunteer back in 2013, and it was an easy thing for me to get into. Once I understood what the organization was about, I wanted to be a part of it. And so after I joined as a volunteer, I almost immediately became a part of their public relations committee. And I served on that committee until I took over the comms manager position. And so, in terms of marketing, ShelterBox is an easy sell. If you get it in front of people, you say, we help families in their darkest hour. I have yet to find somebody to say, well, that's a dumb idea. It's just an easy sell. But the trick is to get ShelterBox in front of people, and that's been my task, right? And so, to be able to come to you guys, there's a lot of you, it's an extraordinary opportunity for the organization, and it's a really neat opportunity for Carrie and I to kind of delve into some of the marketing components that we just don't have the time or resources to do. And so, thank you very much for having us, and we look forward to seeing you guys in action. This is a really cool space, and thanks for having us.
So just to kind of delve into what we do, we're going to start with what we do and then some of the key challenges that we face that I know that you'll be tasked with trying to come up with creative solutions on how to overcome those. But in its most basic form, really, you hear the tagline a lot, shelter born from dignity, and that's really what ShelterBox provides. Oftentimes it comes in the form of this iconic green box, which is right behind me. If you've had the chance to open that up, this one might be empty, but the materials are around. There is a custom designed family tent. There are different tents based on the environmental situation in which it's going to be deployed and which it's going to be used in, and there are different versions of that. Inside there's also solar lights, there's water purification units, there's blankets and ground sheets, there's mosquito nets, there's a toolkit, hammer, saw, nails, and that's one iteration, that's one version. There's also another version which is called a shelter kit. And so if a family has not lost everything, but their home has been devastated, maybe the roof is blown off, which you often see in some of these storms, it's basically the tools that you need to shore up and provide some stability and be able to house people until they can get into more transitional housing. That's more tarps and a toolkit. We also have a version which is a school pack. I don't know if you've seen that yet. Particularly good for use right now we're seeing with the Syrian refugee crisis. Children that have not been in school for years, they're calling it a lost generation. So whether it's through conflict or through an emergency, oftentimes children are displaced not just from their home, but from their education and their school environment as well. So there's a version that's a school kit that contains chalkboard paints and books and pencils and just basic supplies to engage a child. So that's kind of the kind of rice and beans of what we do, and this is the kind of the version that you're seeing here. I would say the organization has done a good job, particularly with one of our strategic partners, Rotary, of really gathering support for the box. One of the things that historically the organization has enabled people to do is make a contribution to the box, a designated contribution, where you can then track your donation and you can actually get a letter on where that box was delivered. That's something that's been deeply meaningful to donors who contributed to that. A box, the average cost is $1,000. That's something that I would say has been very popular. It's also been a challenge as well because ShelterBox is a lot more beyond just a box, and there's a lot of other aid. It's often palletized aids. Sometimes you need thousands of solar lights or thousands of water purification units. So it's not only just the box that we need to raise awareness and support for, it's the overall work, whatever that may be, and the organization is definitely very much beneficiary focused. So we're sending the right aid in at the right time, but it's not always a one-size-fits-all approach. It's really customized based on what's needed most. Right now, the organization is responding to the strongest storm ever recorded to make landfall in the southern hemisphere, which hit over a month ago in Fiji. I mention that because probably most people in this room haven't even heard about that. It was Cyclone Winston, Category 5 direct hit across the island nation of Fiji. It devastated several islands to the point where there are islands like the island of Koro where there's literally nothing left. So 5,000 people living, and there isn't a single indigenous tree left. They had 40-foot storm surges, 300-kilometer-an-hour wind gusts, and literally nothing left. And in that situation, ShelterBox is providing the iconic boxes. It's pretty much all the things that are in that box are what's needed, and that's somewhat the sweet spot around shelter. But I bring up the story of Fiji and our response there right now, because in the line of work of disaster relief, if it bleeds, it leads. And it's on absolutely the worst day ever that people care about the work of the organization. It's very few disasters penetrate and dominate the headlines, like a Haiti, like the tsunami in Japan, like the Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines, the Nepal earthquake. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of emergencies that happen in between that space. And on average, ShelterBox is responding to 26 emergencies a year, so on average, one every other week. And yet, you might not even have one of those that make the headlines and land on CNN or the nightly news that gain the interest and ultimately the financial support of people. And so it's typically on the worst day ever. So probably our biggest year ever was the year, in terms of contributions, was Haiti. And the whole world knew about Haiti very quickly. And there was a lot of support and a lot of earned media around what aid organizations, and in particular ShelterBox, was doing at the time. And that's really what drives the donations. But the unfortunate thing is we can't, do this work on the worst day ever and hope that we're going to then procure the right materials, find the right volunteers, and get it where it needs to go. We are truly preparing every single day. We're also deployed at any given location. We're deployed in several different places at any one time. So we may be in Fiji, and at the same time we have teams in Turkey responding to the Syrian refugee crisis. We have teams in Cameroon and Nigeria, a team in North Korea. So there's ongoing work that never makes the headlines that is truly life-saving work, and oftentimes ShelterBox is the only shelter-based aid organization that even shows up. That happened last year in Malawi, the worst flooding in the country's history. And that was, a huge component of the work last year. Most people only heard about the work in Nepal. And so that's one of the key challenges that we're going to present is around the fact that it's really hard to raise ongoing awareness and support for the work. And it's a privately funded organization. We don't take government money. It's primarily funded through individual contributors like you and me. That's the majority of the support. There's some corporate support, a little bit of foundation support, but it's generally just caring people who learn about the work on the worst day ever that contribute to this. So one of the things we're going to talk about is how to build, broader scale awareness and ongoing support for the work of ShelterBox. So over the course of the 16 years, there's been well over 1 million people that have been helped by ShelterBox. And that's about 95 different countries, including the United States. We're often asked about that. So ShelterBox responded to Katrina, responded to Superstorm Sandy, responded to the tornadoes in Moore, Oklahoma, and we are prepared and ready to work here. The model for the work of ShelterBox is a preparedness model. And so ShelterBox kits, aid that's palletized, is all pre-positioned in strategic hubs around the world. So the reason that we're able to deploy so quickly on the worst day ever is from Dubai to Panama, Singapore, the Philippines, Moore, Oklahoma. There are strategic hubs and often UN depots or shipping spots where we actually have pre-positioned aid that is ready to go and deployed. That obviously takes time and money. It is a pay-it-forward model for ShelterBox, which is one of the challenges we'll present. And that when there's an emergency like Nepal, and people hear about us and they say, I want to help those people on TV that are sitting in Nepal. The aid that is going to Nepal has already been pre-positioned. It's already been supported. It's already come from probably 6 months ago, somebody learning about the organization and contributing. It would be next to impossible to do the work that we do by just waiting for the disaster to hit to then get donations. So it's somewhat of a pay-it-forward model. So when you contribute today, your box or the shelter kit or the aid that you're contributing for will likely be then going to help the next emergency or the next crisis that the organization is responding to. That's something that's, I think, somewhat confusing for donors, is that sort of a model. So how do we kind of build that knowledge base where they respect and understand that that's a key way of how we work?
Okay, so one of the greatest assets that ShelterBox has is the volunteer network. We have about 400 volunteers across the world at different levels. And they stream from anywhere from Team ShelterBox, which is a pretty low-level position. These are people that help us online. They mobilize when a disaster happens, but they do their own events. They don't really ask ShelterBox for resources. They just do things on their own time. Okay, and then you have the ambassadors. That's how I started as a volunteer. The ShelterBox ambassadors are kind of roving spokespeople for the organization. If headquarters gets a call from the Kiwanis Club or the Rotary Club or the local school that they want a speaker or they want to see a ShelterBox tent, we mobilize the volunteers in that area and they go to the school and they handle the presentation. Or if they do something in their area that's a fun event, they can pitch the media on our behalf. So that saves me a lot of work. But these are people that we provide resources for. We have what's called the Ambassador Portal, and you guys will get access to that. And it's just a vast amount of resources, imagery, videos, training tools, and they can use these to kind of make themselves better spokespeople for the organization. And then you have the ShelterBox response team members. We call them SRTs. These are guys and gals that are trained from the organization to actually deploy with our aid and deliver it. Okay, and so ShelterBox is one of the few people that sends responders, and we do that because we want to make sure that the aid goes to the beneficiary that needs it. We don't just drop off a pallet of stuff and say good luck, because that pallet could easily disappear and the people that need it might not actually get it. So our responders almost go door to door, and they verify that this family needs a box, here's your box, they get a certificate of ownership so that other NGOs know that they weren't stolen, and it's their home, it's their property. So after the disaster happens, we expect that most survivors transition from temporary shelter to normal life within 6 months. In some cases that doesn't happen. In the case of Haiti, you have the earthquake happened 6 years ago. There are people still living in a ShelterBox tent 6 years later because they don't have any. There's nothing else there. It speaks to the extreme poverty that Haiti has, but it also speaks to the durability of the equipment that we use. But anyway, the ShelterBox response team members, they go through a rigorous application process, they go through a training process, and they take vacation time from their jobs, from their lives, to go to places they've never heard of usually, to help people that they've never met. They're all volunteers. And so, you have a global network of people who are so selfless. And it's an extraordinary thing because I get to meet these people, I get to talk to them, and they're all just salt of the earth, amazing people. And that's a real strong asset for the company.
So one thing Chris didn't mention is we have probably hundreds of applicants to become an SRT member. 1 in 30 people make it through the program. We have ShelterBox the headquarters is in Cornwall, England. We have an international disaster relief academy there. where people go through, on average, they go for a live training, but on average, the overall remote and live training can take upwards to almost a year to go through the program. And these folks are just highly trained civilian volunteers that go through continuous training. That guy that you saw in the video, Dave Eby in Haiti, is one of those volunteers. They're extraordinary people. It's a really important, I think, part of the story of ShelterBox and how it really comes together, which is, I think, a really interesting and engaging piece of the work. The other piece we should mention is on the ShelterBox, you're going to see a wheel. That's the Rotary wheel. Rotary is the oldest service organization in the world. There's over 1 million members. There are 7,500 clubs in the U.S., and there are tens of thousands of clubs around the world. They have taken ShelterBox on as the official project partner in emergencies, and it was actually a Rotary Club project that started ShelterBox in the UK back in 2000. And they provide a lot of support to the organization in the form of financial contributions from Rotary clubs around the world, to also being a huge network for us in emergencies and crisis situations. In Fiji, we have been responding to Cyclone Winston. Some of the first shelter boxes that we had on the ground were ones that we positioned there with some Rotary clubs in Fiji. So they often help us really not just store supplies, but they also help connect us to the highest levels of government and make the work possible in country when emergencies happen. So it's just a key part of, I would say, how we do our work. And one of the challenges that we have as well is that potentially there could be some fatigue out there, and that a lot of the clubs have heard about the organization. How do we keep it fresh? How do we give them a goal? Do we give them a campaign? How do we really keep and grow that core basic support that's been so critical to the organization's history?
I just want to point out, I handle social media for the organization, so Javier, Megan, Jody, Susan, thank you for your tweets. Keep them coming.
Okay, so I think we should probably set up the problems, set up kind of the opportunities, the issues that we have, the challenges. So, we're preparing every single day for the worst day ever. I think in order for ShelterBox to grow, we have something called the 2025 project. It's to continue to be the leader in the space of shelter, and no vulnerable family without shelter is kind of the tagline they're moving towards. But the goal is to help hundreds of thousands of families annually, and we need to grow. And the way that that's going to happen is through broader scale awareness of the organization and increase mobilization of support, private support for the organization's work. I think definitely streamlining the organization's mission with a compelling and cohesive brand message that people can really get behind, and not just on the worst day ever, but when people are thinking about their philanthropy and they give to charitable organizations, that this becomes a really key part of their philanthropy and the organizations that they want to give to. Improving our online presence. We know that our website leaves a lot to be desired, and so we know we need help. So that's something that, obviously advice and expertise is something we would really love to get from all of you. So increase awareness, increase donations, and I think when we look at our audience, it's definitely Rotary clubs, we know that. In Rotary clubs, they tend to be older, male dominated at the clubs. We do know that there's a huge interest among females in the work of the organization as well. I think we tend to have skew towards an older demographic, but we believe there's huge opportunity to go younger, and just increasing overall awareness, general awareness for the group.
Yeah, I think, industry standard for nonprofit skews toward female, more affluent, older, and we're definitely in that target. It's really hard for us to reach millennials. So, Generation X and older is really receptive to our messaging, but the millennials are notoriously hard to reach for nonprofits. And if we can get in front of them, which we've had some success, ShelterBox has appearances at a couple of music festivals the past couple of years, and we've had some success with getting in front of millennials there, but that's a key demographic that we're missing out
We recently had a good post video. I think you may see it at some point. Very short, like a minute, 20 seconds. They heard about the work in Fiji, and they did a very quick video on Post Rise, and now it's across their channels at over 8 million views. So it's things like that that definitely help on an ongoing basis just to keep the name out there and get people interested and engaged. But I think with this, the nice thing about ShelterBox is people, they get very quickly what we do. You know, obviously it's very tangible. You can see where it's going, why it's needed, and so that I think is a key challenge that we don't have to overcome. It's very clear what we do. So in terms of the challenges, there are 5 that we're going to tee up, and we'll definitely take some questions around them as well. But the first is around how do we build sustainable funding for this organization? And so it's something that, as I mentioned, is the worst day ever, that people care about this work. Is there an opportunity for us to gain more sustained givers, you know, even around the work that we do, that people want to give maybe monthly or, you know, quarterly, but is there something that, what can we do to really gain broader scale awareness and more sustainable funding for this organization? So if you looked at our income, without a doubt, if we look from 2010 through 2015, it's just peaks and valleys. And you can see 2010, Haiti, 2011, Japan, 2013, Hainan, 15, Nepal, but in between there, just, I mean, massive, massive nosedives in terms of support for this organization. So, huge challenge. Transparency. So this is around, you know, I think the name of the game in philanthropy right now, and it should be, is how do I know my dollars are going where I intend them to go? And that can somewhat be a challenge for this organization because on the worst day ever, they want to give to what's dominating the headlines. And it's not necessarily the model that we operate in. It's a pay-it-forward model that we have for this organization. So, you know, how do we, you know, obviously communicate where the donation's going without the donor feeling that the donation was used for a cause and a purpose that hasn't happened yet and really wasn't what motivated their donation in the first place. Generating awareness, you know, I think without a doubt when people think of disaster relief, they think of the iconic charity, the Red Cross, right? It's been around a long time. We've got the First Lady that's doing PSAs and, you know, saying you got to get to the Red Cross. And that's one component of the work. And, you know, there are many things that are needed in emergencies. ShelterBox really does dominate within the shelter space. We do extraordinary work, but it's very difficult to compete against the iconic charities. So, you know, how do we become not even top of mind, I think initially just in people's mind, you know, so how do we really gain broader scale awareness?
I have a quick story for you because it's part of my job. But yeah, so when a disaster happens, it's a very exhausting time, but it's very easy in terms of marketing or generating awareness. You know, ABC World News calls me, CNN calls me. I don't really have to do much. They want to talk to us, right? So 2 weeks after I started working for ShelterBox last year, the 25th of April to be exact, was when the Nepal earthquake happened. And I got a very quick introduction on how to do my job. So I got a call from ABC World News, and they wanted to speak to a member of our team on the ground, right? So within a space of like 30 to 40 minutes, I talked to ABC World News in New York, I talked to my colleague, I talked to the ops coordinator in England at the international headquarters, and I talked to one of our responders in Nepal. Okay, now he had just spent probably a 16-hour day delivering life-saving aid to people. Pretty positive he was tired. And so I woke him up, it's about 1:30, 2 o'clock his time, and I said, he's a British guy, very dry sense of humor. His name's Andrew, and I said, Andrew, I have ABC World News, they want to do an interview about the situation that's going on there. And he said, all right, Chris, do I have time to pee? I said, sure, take your time, you have 5 minutes. And he did the interview, it was great, right? And so we were scheduled to be on prime time that night, but about an hour before broadcast, a Marine helicopter crashed, and we got bumped so that they could cover that. Now that's just the nature of the beast, but the point is that when a disaster happens, we get all kinds of especially if it's a big disaster that's getting media coverage, we don't really have to do a lot. It's times like right now, not right now, we got the whole Centerline thing, which is a big buzz, but when there's not a lot going on, it's hard to stay in the media or in front of people's radar because we're a disaster relief agency. So how do we overcome that? How do we talk about ShelterBox when there's no disaster?
And on a limited resource budget. So we also are not the type of organization that does direct mail. Maybe you get some direct mail from charitable organizations that send you stamps or pens or pads or things like that that cost so much money. And they get, maybe a percent return, but it costs millions of dollars to do that. You don't put money in tactics like that. It's not like they don't work. It's just not I would say, part of our culture of the organization. We kind of beg, borrow, or steal to get this work done, and the money that's raised goes to where it's needed most. And so it's a problem. We know that marketing rewards marketing, but how do we do it efficiently and effectively for this organization and stay true to who we are? Beyond the box, I mentioned to you, how do we articulate beyond the box? Donors love the box feeling. They want to get the letter. They want to know where it went. It's a piece of what we do, and as we become more and more beneficiary focused, it's shelter kits, it's school boxes, it's palletized aid. So I think in order to be truly transparent and accurate with the donors, we have to move beyond just the box. And so while we know it's always going to be an iconic part of who we are and what we do, it's not going away, and it's something that we usually lead with. We have to be all-encompassing of really the work that we do as a whole for this organization. Brand continuity with ambassadors. So Chris mentioned that we have hundreds of ambassadors around the country that go out and do the heavy lifting. They volunteer their time, they go onto the portal, and there are presentations there for them that they go out and they deliver to schools and the Rotary clubs and different fairs and conferences. They are our boots on the ground and in essence kind of our feet on the street to raise awareness of the organization. So they raise and are accountable for about a third of all the charitable donations that come in on an annual basis for the organization. A lot of that is Rotary based, but they're out there delivering the presentations. And so there's a bit of fatigue there. We need to keep it fresh and we need to keep them motivated. I'd love to figure out how to do a campaign with them with a goal so that when they're out there, there's something that they feel is kind of really new and compelling that they're building towards. And so that's a group that we know that we need to, continuously try to train and engage, but we definitely need them on message. It's a large group to wrangle in. They're not employees, they're volunteers. So how do we develop a really strong, cohesive message platform that they can get behind that ultimately is going to help them get out there and raise more support for the organization? So how do we help all of them and really keep them excited and energized about the work like we are and get kind of the best work out of them? So I think with that, I'm turning it back over to you. Do you have any questions, by the way? Yeah. Yeah.
You said a box is $1,000, but what's your average donation?
So the box is $1,000. The average donation, it varies. So the average donation from a Rotary club is typically around $1,000 to $1,200 annually. That's like the sweet spot for the club because a lot of them are going towards boxes. Then generally with donors, it's somewhere in the range of $300 to $400. Yeah. So, in terms of donations, I would say individuals on average could give mostly one time per year. And it's either as a result of a major disaster or for our annual donors, they typically give, and the way people give is most donations for nonprofits come in the last month of the year. The single biggest giving day of the year is the last day of the year because people are getting the tax deductible donations in. And that's just how it goes. Now, in terms of continuous donations, we do have some sustainable donors, and those are donors that give automatically every month online, and that's just deducted automatically. They sign up to be a sustainable donor. There's huge opportunity there.
All right, so there you have it. Those are the 5 challenges that we're going to be working on over the next 48 hours with ShelterBox. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I'll be sending out this video in a different format, but you can follow along again on Twitter with @Centerline. The hashtag is hashtag Lab517. You can talk to me about it at John V. Lane, and I'll be turning this back on with another live broadcast to see where we're checked in on the challenges at about 5 o'clock. Thanks a lot. Thanks for following along. Check out ShelterBox online. Find out what they're all about, and you'll learn more soon. Appreciate it.